Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first online webinar. Hopefully we can go back to normal soon, but this is going to be an interesting experience for all of us. We've used this platform before and seems like it has a lot of options. We're going to go through it. We have 23 attendees. I think we are expecting still some more who registered and might be late. I'm going to go through a few points quick, and then I'll hand it over to our speakers. We're going to talk about opportunities in the face of COVID and how to turn the challenging time into opportunities and leverage what is available out there Canada-wide in terms of services for individuals and businesses. So that will be our topic. We are the usual gang here. We're very excited to have you all again. It's myself, we have Bahar, Sahar, me, and also the founder of formerly Persian Women in Tech and recently Women of MENA in Technology. Sepide is also. I see that in the chat section that you guys are starting socializing, and we have attendees from all over the world. That's very exciting. Few quick things. First thing is that if you might have noticed that recently we've rebranded from Persian Women in Tech to Women of MENA, Middle Eastern, Northern African in Technology. Since March, I would say the anniversary of the 5th year anniversary of the Persian Women in Tech, this rebranding happened. Our mission is the same, to support and build a community that are not as represented, and they are misrepresented or less represented. So we will build a community and a platform for everybody to socialize, to find jobs, to get mentors, and to mingle, basically. But now we have broadened the community, not only from Persian Women in Tech, but to broaden it to women of Middle Eastern and North African. Another point I wanted to make here is that we have the annual membership open in the website. So if you go to the website of the Women of MENA in Tech, you can see that there's memberships there. There's a lot of benefits and cool stuff that comes with the membership. So please check it out. We're going to share the link with you guys also in the event section. Just to let you know what is the plan today, we would go through two presentations. Sahar from R&D Partners, she's going to talk about the services and programs which are available Canada-wise from the government during the challenging times of COVID. And we do have Gabriel from MyTax as well, that he's going to shed some light on MyTax and what MyTax has particularly for this time. I think it's going to be very interesting for the individuals to check that one out. At the end of the session and the presentations, we're going to have a QA session. So you guys, even throughout the presentation, you can write down your questions in the event. We will have 10 minutes of QA at the end. So I'm going to go through the questions, pick few, and try to get the speakers answer those questions within the 10 minutes. After that, we would have kind of a virtual networking event with the speakers. So there are sessions. You will see sessions on the left-hand side of the screen. There will be sessions with the speakers, and there will be a kind of no speaker general networking session for you guys to join. So you will have time if we don't get to go through all the questions or your questions are not answers, you will have time to get into the sessions and ask your questions. One thing to keep in mind is that when you get into a session with a speaker, only 5 people can be on video and communicate with the speaker. So you can ask your questions, get your answer, and please leave the session so that the room is open for somebody else to join and ask their questions. But you're free to join the session and watch and listen basically to the conversations that are happening there. With that, I'm going to hand it over to my friend and colleague who is our speaker as well, Sahar. So she's going to walk us through all the available possibilities during this time. Talk to you guys later.
right, thank you, Tara. Please tell me in the chat if it's not working. I'm going to go full screen so you guys can fully see the slides that I'll be presenting, but thank you again for having me, and I hope that this will be useful to everybody. So I'm going to start the presentation by going through a little bit of who I am. So some information on myself. So I am Sahar. I'm one of the partners at R&D Partners. So we're a consulting firm that works with high growth technology companies to help them identify sources of government funding as well as obtain them. So we work with companies across Canada, really small to large in different industries. And as you might imagine, my team has been quite busy keeping up to date on, there's been over $100 billion in government funding that's been announced related to COVID. So we've been tracking those and keeping on top of them in order to be able to facilitate discussions like we're having today. I'm also co-founder of Fundika, which is in the same breath really an online platform though that allows for the matching of entrepreneurs with different sources of funding. So with this, you can go on Fundika, put in some information, and it matches you with different sources of government funding. In terms of for today's presentation, so the agenda that I'll go through quickly is first we're going to talk about, what are the different funding types that are available, just so we're all on the same page, everyone understands the differences, and then we'll go right into grants, loans, guarantees that are available for small and medium-sized businesses, and then into for individuals. The idea is to present some of them, so I won't be able to go through everything that's available, but I'll definitely touching on some of the most important ones, largest ones, and most available to everybody. The focus will be on Canadian government funding. I saw that there's a few people here from the US, but we'll be going through, if you were to establish a business here during this period, those would be available as well. Otherwise, they'll be for individuals in Canada. So if we start into it, in terms of funding types, so, and like I said, I just want us to all be on the same type, so on the same page. So these are kind of the top ones that are available. They're the main ones, and there are very many different ones, but each of them kind of work differently in terms of the timing of the funding. So first, if we look at tax credits, with a tax credit, the way it works is that as a business, you would incur expenses throughout the year. You would pay your employee's salary, you would buy materials, and then at the end of the year, you'd look back on the fiscal year and you would apply for a tax credit. So you'd say, okay, I spent this much, I'm gonna apply for the tax credit. So this is always done after you've incurred it, which is the big difference. The way a tax credit works too, it can either be refundable or non-refundable. A refundable tax credit means that you're getting cash. So the government will write you a check as a refund on the expenses, whereas a non-refundable would be something that you could use towards taxes owed. Sometimes people will say, I don't have any taxes, I don't have any revenues. Those can often, most of the time, be carried forward, sometimes even couples of decades forward. So they can still be valuable to apply for your future taxes owed. Then we're going to talk about, if we look at grants, loans, and loan guarantees, which is the core of the presentation today. So with grants, typically the way a grant would work is that you would apply for the grant for a specific purpose. So let's say a grant to hire someone, you'd get it approved, and then you'd identify the person and then hire them. I say typically here because with COVID, actually, many of the programs are retroactive. So even though you haven't necessarily applied for them and a month or two has gone by, you're still able to go get some stuff retroactively, which is pretty great because that's uncommon, I would say, with grants, but it is available now, and kind of nice if you didn't know about a program that we'll be presenting today that you could go and retroactively get it. Loans, often people know this one well. We know it from our personal experiences. You would apply for a loan with a financial institution. You'd get the funds, and then you'd go and say, buy equipment, buy things that you needed the loan for. So you apply for this before, and then you incur the expense. Loan guarantee, so this is the one that people typically know least well. So it's the way this one works, it's really a guarantee on a loan that you would take out with a financial institution. So loan guarantees are, for the most part, provided by the government of Canada or the provincial governments. to come and secure a loan that you would get from a financial institution. So the way it would work is that you'd say, okay, I'm going to get a guarantee. The guarantee covers 80% of my loan. So in the event of default, bankruptcy, or other difficult situation, you would no longer be liable for that 80%. You as a company would only be liable for the balance, so the 20%. So this is kind of a very interesting way to minimize your risk when you're taking on a loan for the company and different things. Then finally, there's equity here that is really when you make an investment is made in return for a percentage of shares in a company, and typically the timing of this is closer after to product market fit. So these are kind of the main ones, and now as we go through it, hopefully it'll be clear how each works. So what we're going to start with is the grants that are available for small and medium-sized companies. Here we're kind of adding in the caveat that it's for a company that has at least one employee. Many of these programs will have different eligibility criteria, but across the board, they're all eligible or work for companies with at least one employee. So when we're talking about grants that have come out now as COVID relief, there's really two main areas that they're focused on. The first being avoiding layoffs. And then the second one is really on training employees. We have a mix here on the left side for avoiding layoffs, or really federal programs, so available across Canada. I saw a few people from Toronto and other. And then the Train Your Employees program that I've highlighted here is really a Quebec-based program. If we go deeper into these, so starting with the work sharing program, this is a program that actually existed prior to COVID-19, but that has now been adapted, made more accessible, and increased the funding, which is nice. Eligibility right now is that you have to be at least 1 year in business and have a minimum of 2 employees that would create a work sharing unit. And what that means is that they come together, 2 employees that are EI eligible, they form a work sharing unit, and they agree to actually reduce their hours by at least 10% up to 60%. On a weekly basis, and the balance of their time would be compensated by or through EI. So really, if an employee or a work sharing unit agrees to reduce their hours by 20%, the employer still pays the 80% of their salary, whereas the 20% is paid by EI. The major changes that they made to this program, as I said, it existed before, is that they've extended it, so you can go up to 76 weeks on this program. They've also made it available to companies that have been in business for just 1 year, as opposed to before it being for 2 years, and they've simplified the process. So it used to be like a 25 page document or application. Now it's like a 1-pager that needs to be submitted, which is really nice and streamlined. You just have to submit it as an employer 10 days before the work sharing agreement comes into play. It's really a great program if you're seeing a reduction really in the activities of the company due to COVID-19. And so this is a way to maintain your employees, avoid the layoffs. So it works really well. Next program we'll talk about is the 75% wage subsidy, which is probably the most well-known and most popular one. It's the largest and most important one that was announced by the Canadian government. And these programs that we're talking about are all grants, and they can be combined in different ways. We can get into that in the Q&A if you'd like. In terms of eligibility, this one as an employer, as a company, you have to show that you've had a reduction in revenues compared to last year. So they've split it in terms of periods to show eligibility. There's 3 periods currently that span from March 15th to June 6th that you can be eligible for. So the initial length of this program was 12 weeks. They did announce last week that it will be extended. They kind of hinted at that, and now it's kind of official that it will be extended, but we haven't gotten more info on that. But the revenue drop that you have to show is that in the first period, for example, you would take the period that's from March to April 15th, and you compare it either to you compare March 2020 revenues to either of March 2019 revenues, or the average of January and February 2020. Originally, they hadn't given that second option, and there was a lot of pushback from companies saying, there was very high growth in the year, or the business wasn't very active in the previous year, so it was hard to show these revenue drops, and so they've added that option. So in the first period, you have to show 15%, and the second and third period, similarly, comparing to the previous year or the average of January and February. you would have to show a 30% drop. The other thing to know about this is that you can either look at your revenues from an accrual or a cash basis. If you have questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them. But this is kind of the main criteria for eligibility. In terms of funding, obviously it's a 75% wage subsidy, so it covers 75% of the salaries of your employees up to $847 a week, as well as fully covering the employer portion of the deductions. So it's pretty generous in that way. There are specific details here that I've added just so you know. So these are common questions that come up. There's no cap on the number of employees you can get to fit under this program. New employees that you hire during this period between March and June would also be eligible. On the business side, it doesn't matter if you're open or closed, but it's really a way for you to maintain your employees, so not lose them, really retain them. And although it's a 75% wage subsidy, as a company, you have to show that you're at least trying to top it off with the next 25%. And finally, the applications that open at the end of April, and they're kind of rolling. So you can apply for it now, really, if you're interested. And it's kind of on the CRA portal. They've also released a calculator on the CRA portal that allows you to determine how much it would be for. You don't have to submit any proof of the backup in terms of the reduction revenues, but obviously this could be audited at a later date. A lot of the programs they've rolled out, they've kind of done so in an expedited way so that people can benefit now, and then later there'll be reviews and audits of a number of these programs. The next one is the 10% temporary wage subsidy. So another federal program. This one was actually announced first. The way this one works is that it's a 3-month grant of up to 10%, up to $25,000 per employer for Canadian controlled companies that are also eligible for the small business deduction. So it's really for kind of small businesses, Canadian controls, as well as sole proprietors. The nice thing about this one is you don't actually have to apply for it. It's something that you can calculate when you're doing your payroll remittance. And you can do a catch-up later. So this is kind of something that you should know about, or at least your accountant should know about and apply for. If you have a payroll provider, in most cases, they should do it automatically. Again, the 3 mentioned programs earlier can be combined in different ways. Last in this section is the program around training. So it's called the Concerted Actions Program for the Maintenance of Employment. Often it's referred to as the PACME because that's the kind of acronym in French. The way this program works is that it's for training of your employees during this period. So a lot of people are kind of experiencing some slowdown, or they're pivoting, right? And so through that pivot, they're seeing that we need to bolster or increase training in different areas. And so if a business is interested in that, really training across the board can be included. I've seen some funny things included as training. So very different things can be included. It can go from basic training to very specific expertise to related to the pivot. And it can be very short training, or it can be over many months. The training can be performed at the workplace. They are pushing for it to be done remotely. They currently, in terms of funding, what they're offering is 100% of the expenses covered if your training project is under $100,000. And then they cover 50% for the portion between $100,000 and $500,000. I don't know if I'm all good on time, but hopefully yes. In terms of expenses, so we've kind of outlined a few here. There are some limits on the salaries of the employees in training and the professional fees, but otherwise everything that goes into preparing it and doing it will be covered. So if you're interested in this one, there's a $100 million budget for it. It is only for Quebec companies again, or if you're an employee at a company and you're interested in doing a training, this could be something interesting to bring up, but you have to apply before September 30th. And I do suspect that the budget will run out before that date. So it's kind of a good one to take advantage sooner rather than later. Next, we'll go into the loans and other programs around that. There are many. I'm going to highlight just a few that I think are the most generous and the most interesting at this time. And then we're going to go into the programs for individuals. If we start, one of the most famous ones and most well-known is the Canada Emergency Business Account Program. the CEBA that it's often called. So this is an interest-free loan, so no interest for up until 2022, $40,000 to cover operating costs of the business. It's for small businesses. The application process is very streamlined. To qualify, you have to have shown that you have a payroll of $20,000 minimum and up to 1.5 in the previous year. And what's nice about this is if you're able to pay it back by December 2022, you get to keep $10,000. So it's 25% forgivable. The next one, these next couple are, again, Quebec provincial ones. The CEBA was a federal one. This is for a loan of a minimum of $50,000 for companies that can show that the liquidity shortage and that their liquidity shortage is temporary. So there's a problem with supply of raw materials and products. It's the same for the next program, which is the Emergency Assistance for SME program, which again is a provincial program. But this one is the kind of counterpart when you want less than $50,000 in terms of a loan. For these programs, you just have to have been in business in Quebec for at least a year. The funding will depend, it can be a combination of a loan and a loan guarantee. For this emergency assistance for SMEs, if you're interested and you're in the Montreal area, there's about 40 million that's been allocated to this area, and you can get it through PME Montreal. And what they're giving right now, from the last thing I saw, was about 3% interest rates on the loans, and with a moratorium of up to a year. So meaning that you would have a year of no payments on either capital or interest. Lastly, in this section is the Canada Emergency Rent Assistance. So in order to help companies with their paying their rent, what they're offering at the federal government, this is one of the more recent programs that was announced, is a forgivable loan to the commercial property owners. So it's not to the businesses, but to the property owners. So it's the landlord that would have to apply for it. But it will allow you as a business to benefit from it over the months of April to June. The way it works is that the business and the landlord have to get into a rent reduction agreement where the landlord agrees to reduce the rent of the business by 75%. So the business only ends up paying 25% of whatever their rent was. To be eligible on the business side, they have to have a lease for rent of less than $50,000 a month and have annual revenues of under 20 million and show that they've had a revenue drop of 70% or more since the start of COVID. So really for businesses that are struggling, this is a nice way to cover and work with your landlord to reduce your rent from April to June. Oh, sorry, I forgot that we had this one too. So the last one in this section, for real. BDC is also offering right now to match any current financing rounds that startups are in or doing right now. So for startups that are raising, they're interested in looking at matching with a convertible note for companies that are Canadian, backed by a qualified venture firm that have raised at least $500,000 in external capital before they come to BDC, and that can show that they've been impacted by COVID. This is kind of broad. Obviously, it's to be discussed with the BDC rep, but interesting program nonetheless. I put this kind of as a bonus. So for some companies that are either startups, founder only, perhaps not taking a salary, there are definitely some accelerators to check out that have application deadlines that are coming up, and that are, many of them are actually across the world are now offering virtual programs. So it's a good time to benefit from some programs that you might not be able to attend in person. And they each have their own specifics, but I invite you to kind of check these out. I've highlighted a few here that have deadlines coming up. Now, if we go to the individual side, I'm going to go through these quickly. So in terms of aid that's available for individuals that have been impacted by COVID, we have the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, so the CERB, the CERB, which is really for individuals that have lost their employment and that can't earn money during this period. There's a $2,000 per month that's being offered by the Canadian government. To qualify for it, you have to have made at least $5,000 in the previous year, so in 2019. You must not have quit your job And now they've added that you're able to still, even if you're earning $1,000 a month, you would still be eligible. So the idea is with this is to allow people to really sustain themselves over this period. It's something you have to apply for on a monthly basis, but has been working well so far. The application process being quite streamlined as well. The next one is for students. So for post-secondary students or recent graduates that are not eligible for the CERB that we just talked about, or for EI, there was actually an update today, this morning, from the federal government on the funding. So these numbers are actually incorrect. At least the first one is correct, the second is not. So what they've updated is that it's going to be $1,250 per month for eligible students for the period between May and August. So for students that, were banking on working throughout the summer and can no longer do so due to COVID, they'll be eligible for this program. And then for students that have dependents or permanent disabilities, it's actually gone up to $2,000 a month. So that was announced this morning. And then as a bonus, I've added this other program that we don't have much details on, but that will be interesting, is for students that can't work during this period, but want to volunteer to the COVID response. There's actually a program that's coming out that will provide up to $5,000 towards the tuition and education in the fall. So more details should come on these. Oh, the one thing is that for the emergency student benefit one, the application actually opened this Friday. So May 15th, if you're interested, you could apply for this one. Lastly, for my presentation, I'm just going to quickly go over some of these calls for products and solutions. So if you're a founder, an innovator, a company, an individual, a student that has an idea of a way to help with COVID, that has a business that has pivoted to help with the relief, there are different programs and calls for proposals that could be interesting. So the first one is the Innovation Solutions Canada, which actually offers or puts out different challenges. So they'll have very specific needs that they'll put out challenges for, and then they'll fund it either through a grant or a contract. The grants and contracts phase one go from $150,000 to $300,000, and phase two, $1 million. And for COVID, they actually went up to $2 million. So if it fits, it's great, and you can get a lot of benefit from that. To know more about that, you probably have to sign up for their newsletter. In terms of the next one, the Encore one, so this is for Quebec and Ontario only provinces, and it's really for solutions that are leveraging 5G to develop solutions to the COVID. So this would also be an interesting one if you have something aligned with that. Next is the post-COVID challenge. So for this one, it's a $50,000 direct financing that's possible for entrepreneurs in Quebec. This one, there's 3 components. So education, healthcare, and employment, solidarity. So if you're coming up with solutions around that, this one has a May 15th deadline. So I'm bringing this up kind of late, but if it fits, it could be interesting. And second to last here, the CDL has a special program right now, again, for COVID-19 solutions. And finally, going through these very quick, I know, call for suppliers. So public works and government services is not funding, but if you have a solution that could fit, then highly recommend checking it out. Oops. Okay. So the last one, yeah, it's really just for suppliers of PPE or other solutions. That could be great. So lastly, I'll leave you, I took a little bit more time than anticipated, resources. So on the R&D Partners website, we have a list that we keep up to date of different sources of financial aid right now related to the COVID-19. And then on Fundico, we have infographics. So we'll share this presentation after. These are linkable, and you can check those out. And then lastly, fundica.com, if you're interested in seeing beyond what we talked about today in terms of programs, you can go on there and check it out. All right, so I'm going to pass it on to Gabriel. So thank you so much. I look forward to talking about this further. If you have any questions, again, you can kind of write them in the chat, and we can address those at the end with our during our Q&A, otherwise in the sessions.
All right. you. So I'll get ahead with my part of the presentation. Thank you very much to everyone for having me here. I'll be representing MyTax. You who don't know MyTax or are not familiar, I'll talk a little bit about what we do, and I will more specifically talk about our Accelerate program, which is the program that might be of interest for you. So here I go. Okay. Okay. So I'll start by, not everybody's familiar with MyTax, so I'll talk a little bit about who we are. We are a Canadian independent, not-for-profit organization. We were founded some 20 years ago. And again, if anybody wonders why we're called MyTax, well, we started out in for the little folk story, we started out in mathematics 20 years ago with a vision, and I'll explain what that is. And we branched out from math into all the STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. And today we cover really all the departments and all the faculties at universities. So I'll get a little bit more into detail of that. So we're funded by government at the federal level. We're funded by the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Industry, and then we're also funded by at the provincial level. So here in Quebec, it's the Ministère de l'Économie et de l'Innovation that support us. And our mandate continues to be the same and has always been since the beginning. And it is to help companies connect with academic expertise that exists within universities to leverage it. So to help their innovation at their company, and create a link with university and be able to leverage the expertise that exists at Canadian universities. So if we take just a few steps back, Canadian universities have got a really good reputation around the world. They do world-class research, and there's a lot of knowledge at our universities. And what MyTax does is it helps companies connect themselves with the expertise that exists at the universities, so that companies can get help for the projects that they're working on, and also leverage the know-how that is getting developed at the university. So whether you're, and I'll get into it, MyTax has a little bit in for everyone, whether you're even a professor, a student, or a company. There's some benefit from using our programs. Very quickly, we have official partnerships with all universities across Canada. We're a little bit over 200 staff at the moment, so we're not a huge organization. We're 200 people across, slightly above 200 people across Canada, distributed into 4 main hubs. The biggest ones being Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and Ottawa. And we partner with companies. We have over 60. We've partnered with thousands of company partners, and we've supported tens of thousands of research projects up to now. I'll talk MyTax. If you go on our website, there's a suite of programs that we have. I'll just spend a little bit more time on Accelerate, and then ultimately it relates back to what we've been doing for COVID. So I'll link back to that at the end. But Accelerate is our, it's, if you go on our website, you see that we have a suite of programs. Accelerate, it's still like 75% of what we do. It's our main program, and if somebody talks about MyTax, well, it's likely that they got to know us through Accelerate. We've got a very simple process. MyTax, through our team, we proactively go out and connect with companies, and we try to hear, where are their innovation challenges? What technical problems are they going through? What innovation, what R&D are they focusing on? Are they facing a technological challenge that is difficult? And from there, we help them connect and find expertise that is based at the university. So, like I said earlier, we have partnerships with every university across Canada. And so we have the ability to connect companies with expertise across Canada. So if you're in Montreal, from your Montreal operation, you can connect with Montreal professors, but not only, you can go outside of Montreal to all Quebec and even to all Canada. And so MyTax will actually help you doing this, creating this connection. It's a little bit different from where that helps the company, and it's a little bit different from the company just trying to find an expert, an academic expert, trying to go on their research page. A lot of times it's not updated. They don't know who to talk to. They send an email, they don't get a reply. Am I talking to the right people? MyTax is actually there to help you navigate this whole ecosystem. So you come to us and you say, hey, this is what I do, and this is where I'd like some help. And it doesn't have to be very, very specific. It can just be saying, I'm hearing that there's a new technology coming up. I've got it on my radar, and I'd like to see how I can integrate this cutting edge, technology or approach within my technologies. And so we help you connect with somebody who can help you. As part of this connection, we make a match, we make a matchmaking, and then from there you will, once you've found somebody with whom you can connect, you can create an application for a project that you got, the company and the academic supervisor are going to be collaborating on. And the important part of that is that students also, and I'll get to it a little bit later, students will also be involved in doing the project. So you come to us, you got a problem. Okay, all right, here's a list of expertise around Canada. We do some matchmaking. You find somebody who's like, you really want to work with them because they've got great ideas. Okay, let's put a research project together. A proposal gets written, and then we send it out for peer review. And once it gets approved, well, you get up to 55% of the grant that is funded by MyTax. So not only you get the matchmaking and the team at your disposal to help you, connect and put the proposal together, but also you get a financial leverage from that. So in a nutshell, that's our Accelerate program. If you haven't heard from us in the past, it's normal. We grew from a very, very small program 20 years ago. And if I got there's not even the numbers from 20 years ago, because we were double digits. But if we look at, where we were, in 2008, we were doing 229 projects in that year. And then you kind of see the growth, and that's not cumulative. It's how many projects we've been submitting every year. So we see that there's been a really strong growth across Canada. Companies have been using our model. They've been seeing the benefits of leveraging, obviously, our the financial the financial help that we can extend to companies, but also leveraging the network and reaching out to us so that we can help them. So we see there's a very, very strong growth. A quick note to say that 65% of the companies that have used us last year were doing so for the first time. So if you haven't heard of, you're a startup, you're an SME, or even you're a multinational, you haven't heard of MyTax, but you say, hey, what Gabriel's saying sounds interesting, reach out. And 65% of companies do so for the first time. Last year it was their first project. So we're onboarding all the time new companies, and the doors are wide open as long as you've got as long as you do business here in Canada, you've got an office here in Canada, and you conduct research activities, R&D or innovation activities here in Canada, will be able to support you. Okay, MyTax Accelerate. If I can sum it up, you have an academic supervisor that we will help you connect with. Obviously, there's the enterprise, the company. So when I talk about companies, it can be a large company, it can be a multinational, it can be a startup, it can be a small or medium enterprise, it can even be a not-for-profit. And not-for-profits are a bit of a special case, but we're able to support projects for not-for-profits as well. So if you're falling into that category, either you work for a company that is doing research or innovation, you can reach out to MyTax and we can help you navigate our programs and start helping you. If you're a startup and you're working on your project, we're there to help you. I personally work as an account manager here in Montreal. My portfolio covers all of Quebec, and I support companies that go from multinationals all the way to two people that are at a WeWork. So we do so indiscriminately. We are very agnostic. MyTax is not focused on a certain on a certain industry. We are present in some industries more than in others, just by the nature of our programs. But we do so very agnostically. Like, as long as you are based in Canada, you're doing Canadian research, we are willing and happy to help you. One of the things that I mentioned a little bit earlier is that once a company has found a match with a professor, a student is going to come into play. So the actual work is going to get done either by a master's student, a PhD student, or a postdoc. And this is really kind of on top of the money that we give, and the networking and the matchmaking. This is really part of the twist that MyTax has, is that when a collaboration gets put together between a prof and a company, the work actually gets done by a student. And the twist that we put in is that we actually ask the student to work directly with the company. So, right now everybody's practicing social distancing, so everybody's working from home. But before the teleworking for everyone came down, we actually asked for researchers to go and have an office and work directly for the company and spend time there, right? So there's benefits really for, through that relationship. There's benefits for everyone. So if you're a company, we'll help you innovate, be competitive. We're going to help you find some talent through our programs. There's obviously financial assistance. If you're a professor at the university, well, this is funding for your research, because MyTax puts in half, the company puts in half, and then we put together these research grants that your students can work on, and you get to work on industry relevant research projects. Yes, it's a little bit more applied research, more than fundamental research, but it's industry relevant. And also, one of the things that's been a very big advantage for professors who have used MyTax is that they actually get to touch on industry relevant data that otherwise might not be available to them. Obviously, if you're a researcher, I'll talk a little bit more on my next slide. You have access to funding for your studies. Okay, so MyTax, we've got some programs that can help support you. The grant that gets put together goes almost completely towards the students, so that they can be financially supported while they're doing the work on this collaborative project. In terms of number, what is it? The smallest project that MyTax can put together, again, through our Accelerate program, it's what we call one module. So one module is 4 to 6 months of a project. It's $7,500 that the company puts in. MyTax puts in $7,500, so we have a $15,000 grant per module. And again, this is per student. One student can work on one module. It's 4 to 6 months. This is what we call standard Accelerate. But you can do more than one module. So you could spend there like 8 months, or do 2 modules of 4 months. Also, very interestingly, we have what we call the Master Fellowship programs and the PhD Fellowship. So a student can actually go and spend more than one module and basically get all their masters or PhD or postdoc funded through MyTax. All right. So very quickly, if you're a graduate student, well, what's the advantage for you if you are a grad or even an undergrad student, and you're looking at doing some grad studies? It's exposure to industrial environment, because through our programs, we actually bring a company to you. We bring an industrially relevant research project to you, and then when you're working with the company, when you're creating this networking, you're creating this this connection with the company. And did I mention it? Okay, yeah, I forgot to mention it. Sorry, 2 slides ago. One of the important points for students is that every time that we put a student in contact with a company through a MyTax collaborative project, we keep track of our statistics, and in 36, I think we're at 38 now. We're getting close to 40% of the time. The students that get involved with a company eventually convert with the same company that are into full-time employees. So that's one of the very big advantages. The government is very aware of that. It's one of the reasons why they keep supporting us so strongly. Every time we've done this matchmaking between a professor and a company, well, a student comes in the picture, and lo and behold, almost 40% of the time, the company ends up keeping the student, because there's been some innovation work, and in most of these cases, it's new positions that the company has created. Okay, sorry. So I'll just jump back forward. Again, if you're a student, if you're an undergrad student, and you're thinking of doing some doing a master's, well, MyTax extends what we call the master fellowship, so it's funding for 2 years. PhD fellowship funding for 3 to 4 years. We've got industrial postdoc fellowships 2 years. Again, we've got another program which is not Accelerate, but it's very similar. It's Elevate, and that's a postdoc fellowship with that is 2 years, and we provide some extra training that's competitive. I want to mention that the Accelerate is not competitive. As long as you meet the requirements, you'll get it, and there's no like hard drop date for you to submit the program. Your proposal. You can submit it anytime, and if you meet the requirements, you will get the approval. The Elevate is competitive. I should have mentioned it. All right. If you're a startup or an SME, well, what's the benefit for you of reaching out to MyTax? Well, the first thing is we're going to help you navigate the academic system. You might have already one connection with a professor, but there might be the potential to create other connections with other professors, or even helping you organize a bigger project that's beyond one student. Personally, the biggest project that I've worked on was for a single company that had 100 students. It's not the project; it's a program. It was like a technological program that the company was launching into. So very, very strategic stuff. We help you find an academic expert that can help you find solutions. A lot of times I tell companies, don't wait until you know exactly what you want to do. Come to us early. If you see, for example, that you're operating a technology and you want to integrate, I don't know, like let's say natural language processing, come to us early. We're going to go and try to find an expert for you that can start working. And they might already know how to do it. They might already have very good ideas about how to approach your problematic. Through our programs, you get a comprehensive work plan, because it's not just like, okay, you guys get together and MyTax will give you some money. There's an actual work plan with deliverables and milestones that gets written up, and that's very beneficial for the company, because it's results oriented. They know what they're going to be getting, not only at the end of the project, but throughout the project. It's peer reviewed, so when you put the proposal together, we actually send it out to other academics, and they will validate that it's actually innovation, right? And this will be backed against literature reviews that other academics are doing. This is one of the big strengths that MyTax has, is that when you put a proposal through MyTax, you are pretty darn sure that you are doing innovation. Like this is making you very competitive against your competitors. You are really leading edge. You're getting into the cutting edge of technology. And so for startups, if you are not at the cutting edge, this can spell death for you. So MyTax is a way to make sure that you are continuing to be relevant by having cutting edge technology being developed. We'll collaborate. We'll through the collaborations we ask. I said it earlier that there be a physical presence between the researcher, or the physical connection between the researcher and the company. Again, right now everybody's teleworking, but we actually ask that the researcher and the company directly connect together. So yes, there's a connection with the prof, but we also ask that the researcher and the company directly connect together, and that ensures that the research project that is going on is satisfactory for the company and answers their needs. We ask that we used to ask for the student. I mean, right now, everybody's is working remotely, but we actually ask that the student go spend a minimum of 25% of the time at the company, and it could go up to 75% of time at the company. So we saw very, very often students going and spending virtually all their time at the company, working on their project directly for the company. And obviously, as you know, that's a very good way of creating a connection between the student and the company. And you can understand why in almost 40% of the cases, the company ended up hiring the student when they were done with their studies. If you're a startup or an SME, this is a fantastic way of meeting future graduates before they reach the job market. A lot of companies, I've worked personally with a lot of startups here in Montreal. One of the complaints of startups was talent. They were looking for talent. They were looking for talent in AI, and they obviously don't have the funds or the muscle to, to compete against other companies or the other much bigger companies that are out there. Well, if you work through MyTax, we can actually go and connect you directly with the university, and you will connect with talent before it reaches the job market. So you have an advantage there. You have a strategic advantage there, which startups have leveraged a whole lot, and I mean it's hugely beneficial for them. Obviously, leverage your funds 1-to-1 and 3-to-1, which leads me to getting close to the end of this presentation, what MyTax and we've done specifically for COVID. So I'll go very quickly because it's already 6
Yeah,
o'clock.
Gabriel, we have maybe less than a minute.
Okay, anyway, so we've got some programs that we've thrown out for COVID where the leverage, instead of asking you to pay $7,500, we've asked you to pay half of that, so $3,750. If you have a project that's COVID related, if you're an SME, then you're eligible for those. We also have a business internship that is going to roll out soon. That is non-research. It's the onboard business students to help you with your business strategy. Thank you. That's all for me. So if you've got any questions, feel free to connect. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can send me an email, or you can give me a call. I'm an account manager here in Montreal, and my role is to cover the business here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Thanks, Sahar. It was great information. We are a little bit behind schedule, and we didn't see questions coming from the attendees. I do have 2 quick questions for the speakers, but I prefer for us to maybe keep the questions and join the sessions that are live now. And if you guys have questions from the speakers, you can also join there. Just 2 quick notes before we wrap it up. One thing is the recording of the session. Somebody asked about that. This is recorded. It's going to be on YouTube, and we will share the link with you. Another thing is, if you want to donate with us, please go ahead and send us an email at montreal@persianwomenintech.com, and let's keep in touch. Thank you. Enjoy the networking session, and we'll see you in the sessions. Please feel free to join there and ask your questions.